Coming to you, John James, first. Troubling development there. Kherson has fallen. This is a port city, 285,000 people, the first regional capital to fall. And Lucas Tomlinson, our own Lucas, puts this out on Twitter, that French president has warned that the worst is to come in Ukraine. Russian forces won't stop until entire country is conquered, Macron said after he had about a 90-minute call with Putin. So there is worse to come. John, your thoughts?
I've been to war, and I've been taught that when your opponent makes a threat, you better believe him, and if you don't, it's at your own peril. Americans need to look at themselves in the mirror and decide for themselves, are they willing to be complicit in genocide? Are they willing to be complicit in watching the West fall? Because make no mistake, Russia didn't invade Ukraine just on its own. Russia invaded the West. Russia made a direct attack and aggression on our way of life, on freedom, democracy, and opportunity, and we're allowing it to happen. America is showing the world, America is showing Russia, America is showing China that we're going to stand back and we're going to allow this to happen instead of creating a no-fly zone, instead of destroying that 40-mile convoy that is going to get on the ground and terrorize the Ukrainian people, instead of moving strategic assets to support Eastern Europe and keeping our promises. And 6 months after we failed to keep our promise to the Afghanis, we are failing to keep our promise to the Ukrainians. The next 100 days, make no mistake, the next 100 days will absolutely be critical in shaping the next 100 years. Will we allow the communists to do it, or will America step up and lead?
Right. KT, you know, there's this really eye-opening piece in the New York Times. It's by Andriy Yermak. He's the head of the Presidential Office of Ukraine. I think it really emphasizes the dire straits for the Ukrainian people and the need for help. He said this: "I'm writing from a bunker with President Zelensky beside me. We will fight to the last breath. We are thankful to our American and European allies, friends, to democracies worldwide, including Australia and Japan, for their quick decisions to help us, for their sanctions against the Russian economy, for the arrangements and equipment to deter the aggressor. But it's not enough. We need more. And please stop telling us military aid is on the way. Nothing less than our freedom and yours is at stake." And he goes on to say, please put an embargo on oil. Please don't exempt some entities from the SWIFT banking system. Do more. And there is more that can be done. Of course, we don't want to send troops, but is there more that can be done, KT?
Sure, there's a lot more that can be done, and it's mostly economic things that could be done. Look, I think the tragedy of all of this is a year ago, Ukraine was lost. I mean, that is the huge tragedy. And why was it lost? Because a year ago, America had energy independence. President Biden came in, started shutting down the American energy industry. What happened? The price of oil and natural gas went through the roof. What did that do? It gave Putin a huge war chest to go to war. And then the second part of it is that Europe is dependent on Russian energy for its very survival. So as a result of that, Putin, as long as he wants Ukraine, eventually gets it. The price will be very high for him, which is sadly for the Ukrainian people. But I think it's a real wake-up call for the United States. You know, I keep thinking, Kayleigh, because, you know, as a national security expert, I keep thinking, okay, where in history have we seen this before? To me, this is like the battle in 480 BC, the battle of the Spartans, the 300 Spartans who stood at the pass of Thermopylae, yes, and fought off the entire Persian army. Now, at the end of the day, those 300 Spartans did not succeed. The Persian army did come to Greece, but what they did, they sacrificed of those 300 Spartans, got all the other Greek city-states together, and they stood up and they fought off the Persians. Persians never took Greece. Now, where are we today? I think that what the Ukrainian people have inspired is NATO. NATO was falling apart a year ago. There was nothing much to it. It was just a shell, largely because Germany wasn't participating in its own defense. But over the last weekend, the German government, in a complete reversal of its previous position, they said, we are going to now diversify ourselves. We don't want to be on Russian energy. We are going to support Ukraine. We are giving Ukraine lethal weapons. Oh, and by the way, we're going to increase our defense spending to 2% of our GNP. Those are the things that has now galvanized NATO. So whatever Putin does with Ukraine, the question he always wanted to go for, he always wanted to break the back of NATO. I think this is going to become very difficult for him going forward.
Yeah, I think so. And Harris, you have a point.
Yeah, so just to further, KT, what you just said is so eye-opening. I mean, why would Russia be a part of all of this? Why would we be complicit in a situation where we would have the Russians sit down with Iran, you know, for our proxy? It's all about oil, right? I mean, Germany gets 60% of that energy from Russia. Russia doesn't want to go without that, especially not while it's being sanctioned. So Russia's, Germany's probably in the best position out of all of us until the United States remembers who she is through Biden. I don't know. It's like she's having some sort of an amnesia project going on. I just want to add some facts. 90% of pre-staged Russian forces are now in Ukraine. This seems critical to me. John James, you're a strategist. You've been on the ground. In general majority, the missiles are coming from inside of the country of Ukraine. Mobile systems inside Ukraine. 160 from Russia, 230 from inside Ukraine, 70 from Belarus, and the rest of the Black Sea. That tells you that the Russian forces are so far inside that country that they're not missing many of their targets. That's what that means to me. And those previous comments I was making, those facts about Germany perhaps having more of an appetite to help out because they know they can pressure Russia, when are we going to get hungry like that? When are we not going to be late the way that President Zelensky says the rest of the world has been?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, going to energy, Harris, there's this report that apparently there's disagreements among lawmakers about what to do because, of course, you don't want to penalize Americans here. Fuel prices are high. We just saw
they're already
the largest one-day increase exactly in the national average price of regular unleaded gasoline. But apparently there are some Republican lawmakers, according to NBC, that are publicly calling for sanctions targeting Russia's oil and gas. Democrats in Congress are weary of any direct action against Russian oil sales that could trigger a massive spike in oil prices. But here's the point. They remain open to ideas that would expand domestic energy production, congressional aides say.
You mean like the one they killed?
Like the Keystone Pipeline. Yeah. Emily, your thoughts on all this?
I mean, this is also on the heels of today, the White House requesting from Congress $10 billion in further aid to Ukraine, which includes not only security assistance, but also economic and humanitarian. I just keep coming back to Zelensky's comment earlier in response to Trey's question, where he said, yes, it's great to connect with Biden. I paraphrase that part. And then he said, it's a pity that connection began after the beginning of the war. And that just... I felt shame. I felt so sad because to KT's point, Ukraine was lost a year ago. There could have been so much demonstration of support the United States could have engaged in. And just 30,000 feet view for a moment, just today alone, while Russia is going to hold a Security Council on their end meeting, we know, as mentioned earlier in a 90-minute phone call to French President Macron, Putin again recommitted to seeing through his goals, and he upped the ante, not only to his original goals, but he said, I'm going to request more, essentially hostage requests from NATO and the rest of the world, and he said, I will see it through to the end. We're learning now that these cities are encircled, that 90% of them amassed on the border are inside. So the stakes are higher, and this is why Zelensky also said, he said, the only thing that's going to achieve peace is me speaking personally with Putin or the world recognizing that the world collectively is a greater superpower and military might than Putin's forces. He is begging the world to step in a stronger way because at this part, by the way, with sanctions, Putin makes more per his invasion with the skyrocketing oil prices. Putin is making more by the day than sanctions are depleting him. And former National Security Advisor O'Brien made that point to you last hour. So this guy is sitting pretty while the rest of Ukraine and refugees now spreading out through Europe are fleeing and are suffering the consequences.
Mostly because of the oil that we're buying. I mean, Germany is not the same size as the United States. So getting 60% of their energy from Russia isn't the same as us getting, making them the third largest supplier of a nation with 330 million people. Yeah. I mean, we are definitely doing that. And there was another time in history, just to add on to KT's point, where we learned this lesson. We were so late to World War II. Millions of Jews and other people had been tortured and put to death by Hitler by the time we got into that war.
Yeah.
We know how to be on time. We know how to be early. We just chose not to be.
Yeah.
Then and now, apparently.
Yeah, and sanctions take a month for Russians to feel. So why weren't they put in place a month ago when we knew that Putin was going to invade? It's a question I'll never understand the answer to.